Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for another episode of The Future of Work with Jacob Morgan. My guest today is Tiger Tyagarajan. He's the CEO of Genpact. Tiger, thank you so much for joining me today.
Jacob, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
So we have so much to talk about today, but first, I'm always really interested, and I know the guests are as well, or the viewers and listeners, to learn just a little bit more about you, just your backstory, how you grew up, how did you ultimately become the CEO of Genpact?
Jacob, I grew up in the city of Bombay. Um, uh, in the early years, very focused on math and science, went on to do my engineering, decided that I actually didn't want to work in a factory designing things. I would prefer to work with people. Did my MBA, and then joined, in those days, Cheeseborough Ponds, a company that sold personal care products, cosmetics, and all this was in India. And I was there for 6 years, became part of Unilever globally because Unilever acquired Cheeseborough Ponds, learned sales and marketing and distribution and people management, all of that. Spent a few years at Citibank, learned financial services, before ultimately joining GE in 1994. And then it's been a story that's taken me through various jobs in GE. One of the jobs I did was run this business. We then spun off this business in 2005, and here I am.
Wow. And so what was actually the first job you've ever had?
Area sales manager for the company I joined, Cheeseborough Ponds, owning sales and distribution for one of the 20 plus states in India.
And do you remember that first job well? And has work changed a lot since you had that first job?
I remember the first job really well. And I would answer the question as work has changed a lot from those days. For example, if I needed to speak to someone in another city, I would have to book a call and wait for the booking to come through. And sometimes, depending on the city you're calling, you could be calling into a city where it's a very small town. You could have 5 days pass by before the booking comes through.
Wow.
So that's changed. If you want to send information about a new product launch to 100 people located in 100 different cities, they're salespeople and your stockist and distributor, you would print it out and then put each of those into an envelope and have it mailed to those people through snail mail. So that's changed. But I'll tell you, a whole bunch of things haven't changed. How you motivate people, how you get teams together, how do you go after results, how do you drive change? I would say nothing has changed. All my learnings from those days, still I use them.
For people who are not familiar with Genpact as an organization, can you also give a little bit of context around the company? Because you guys are actually a massive, massive organization.
Yeah. So in terms of size and scale, we are about 100,000 people located in 25 odd countries. We deliver business services and technology services and digital services to large enterprises, which is why in the first 6-7 years, we grew up as part of General Electric, GE, delivered the same services for GE. And then in 2005, after being part of GE for 7 years, we spun off. And since then, we serve 700 different enterprises across the globe. 400 of those are global 1,000 companies, so we serve large enterprises. And the kind of services we provide are finance. So we do finance for a large enterprise. We would manage the information flow on supply chain or procurement. We underwrite lending for consumer loans or for commercial loans. We manage insurance claims and processing of insurance claims. And then these days, over the last 5 years, we've built a significant business around bringing in new digital technologies, robotic process automation, AI, machine learning, into the services that either we deliver for our clients or the clients run for themselves, and change the way those get done.
Yeah.
That's a broad $3.5 billion in revenue, listed on the New York Stock Exchange. And as I said, 100,000 people, most of them working from home these days.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. Things have gotten a little bit crazy these days with so many things that are happening with Black Lives Matter, with COVID, the racism, the social injustice stuff that's going on, protests. So I actually want to start with the one part of this, and that is specifically around COVID. And when this was first becoming a thing, what was your reaction to it when you first heard about it, when you were first thinking, you might have to close offices, everybody might have to be remote? Do you remember like what your thought process was?
Oh, very clearly. And our first understanding of COVID-19 was through our China business. We have 4,500 people based in China, local China. We deliver services for China, for Japan, for Taiwan, for Korea, all of that from China. And late January, almost at the end of January, is when we first encountered what COVID-19 means from our Chinese team. And I remember the decision we took of shutting down our offices in Dalian, and 3,500 of the 4,200 people in China work out of Dalian in our offices, moving them to work from home, not knowing how to do it, not having a playbook, not knowing how to deal with clients. And by the way, the clients were also switching to work from home.
Yep.
So all of us were discovering a new way of working, never having tested it, learning along the way. And a week later, 4,200 people were all settled in their offices, delivering services in China from home. And that's when some of us said, are we sure this is not going to be a problem in other parts of the world? And if you remember, I think it was early Feb when the press started talking about Seattle and Washington.
Yep.
And that's when some of us got together and said, look, this could become a SARS or an Ebola. And what do we do? So we started preparing ourselves across the globe. And as it so happened, fortunately, we did that. But by the time we came to late February, early March, we started shutting down all our offices. We were probably a couple of days to a week ahead of shutting down offices before any lockdown happened in most parts of the world. And that obviously is a big benefit because it gives you time to actually switch to work from home.
How did you actually, because you said you didn't have a playbook, you didn't have a process, you didn't have a template. So how did you actually do? I mean, did you just tell everybody don't show up to work, use your laptops, because obviously there's the logistics of equipment, there's the technology that you need to get people to work together. So how did you guys all scramble together to make this work?
I think scramble is the right word. we did scramble. Jacob, look, I think one of the advantages we have as a company is a pretty deep understanding of process and process design. That's the way we grew up, using Lean and Six Sigma and process thinking in everything that we do. So it didn't take very long for us to say, hey, guys, we don't have a playbook. So here's the leadership team. So a couple of my global operating leaders took charge. All of us contributed to it, but a couple of people drove this and basically laid out various work streams and teams to actually start building those playbooks. Having said that, we were clear that time was of the essence. So therefore, we were not searching for perfection. We just said, let's build something that allows us to move and then refine it over time. And that's another belief that we have, which is quickly build something and start using it and then allow people to improve it over time. And then we had the benefit of a lot of our clients also doing the same thing in China. So we were talking to them, I would say probably 3 or 4 times a day with 100 such clients. So that became a phenomenal way of crowdsourcing learnings and giving them learnings as well. They appreciated the calls because we told them what we are doing. A bunch of them learned, and then we learned from them. And that's how we progressed.
I think a lot of people don't understand, especially for a CEO, the amount of probably pressure and stress and maybe even a little bit of fear that a lot of top leaders go through when something like this happens, because obviously you're responsible for 100,000 people at the company. You have the shareholders and stakeholders who are there. You have partners, you have suppliers. So I would imagine when this was going on, it was probably you and your team were maybe a little stressed out.
Yeah, I think that would be fair to say that we were stressed out. But I think a couple of things make a difference in those situations, Jacob, and we've seen this play out in many, many similar situations when you're confronted with, oh wow, I didn't expect this, and a stress mode that typically one would go to, and a fear mode, is you need a few North Stars to guide you. You need a few North Stars that says, here's the way in which we're going to take decisions. And I would say values and culture play a significant role in guiding your decision-making process. And as long as you are clear about that, as long as everyone is clear about that, you have, first of all, an alignment where everyone says, that's the North Star, those are our values, that's our culture. And that, therefore, makes decision-making easier and with speed. And second, you do your best. You do your best to deliver whatever North Star you define. So for us, the North Star for us was, we always pride ourselves on incredibly great service to our customers. And we think that's what makes us different, and that's what gets us new business and growth. And we also pride ourselves on being a great place to work for our employees.
Yeah.
So therefore, right out of the gate, we said, we want to achieve two design principles in every decision. Number one, do the right thing for our employees, protect their safety and wellness. And two, make sure that we continue to find a way to deliver service to our clients, because we quickly realized that a lot of the services we deliver, if we stop delivering, our clients would suffer significantly, and the economy would suffer significantly, whichever economy it serves. So we had to balance in every decision these two things, but it allowed us to take decisions that basically said, these are the two important things, everything else doesn't matter.
Did you, and a lot of organizations had to go through layoffs and furloughs, did you guys have to make some tough decisions as far as people as well?
Well, we didn't and haven't had to go through major layoffs so far. And that's probably a little bit of strength and resilience of our business model.
Yeah.
But we had to take some tough decisions. So we froze salary increases across the globe. We said that we will not hire for some time new people into the company. And those were important decisions. The second decision was incredibly important because as some of our clients, so let's take a few of the large global hotel chains that we serve, as they shrank in their business, some of the work that we do shrank. Some of the people who do that work became available. Option one, you got to furlough them or let them go. Option two, can we find a way to redeploy them into new work that we are getting from other clients? And thankfully, we have a pretty strong learning culture in the company. So we allowed our learning platforms to take over. We basically made these people go through very quick training, all virtual, and flip them to new clients. And that's really worked. As we speak, Jacob, I think about 6,500 people out of the 100,000 have got redeployed from what they were doing pre-COVID-19 to what they are now doing through COVID-19.
Wow, that's impressive. I'm curious to get your take, because there have been a lot of organizations that had to go through layoffs. And as the CEO of a 100,000 person company, I hear mixed stories. Some people say, oh, these organizations didn't do everything that they could. They could have done better to help these employees. And then other people say, well, these organizations didn't have any choice. So when it comes to these types of things like layoffs and furloughs, I mean, as a leader of a 100,000 person company, when you see other organizations doing this, what do you think? Do you think they didn't try hard enough? Do you think it was necessary?
So, Jacob, I would start by saying I think it's unfair to make assumptions as the CEO of Genpact about what's been the process and thinking to a decision of any other enterprise. I would argue that most leaders spend a lot of time thinking through these decisions. It's never an easy decision. Most leaders know that one of their objectives is to build a brand for talent. After all, we've always been, for many years, in a situation of a talent war in the world. And I don't think COVID-19 is going to change that. I think there's still going to be a war for talent, for great talent. And that includes how do you treat people, and includes fairness and so on. So I would argue most leaders, I think, do an amazing job going through a very significant decision-making process on, what's the right thing to do? Can I grow my business? Can I do other things with the people? Can I redeploy them, et cetera, et cetera? There comes a point in time when you're left with often nothing else to do. And really it becomes, how do I sustain the company for the long term while I deliver on the short term? And that includes employees as well. If by taking some actions on some people, you're able to protect a very large group of people, that's a very fair and right decision for any leader to take. So I would say, I think a lot of leaders go through that process, and I think it's not an easy process, and it creates angst. And but that's part of the leadership job.
So we should give these leaders more credit and not just assume that just because we read about layoffs that they don't care about their people.
Yeah, I think so, Jacob.
That's fair enough. So you mentioned a couple times tough choices. Do you have a framework or methodology that you use when you personally have to make a tough choice, whether it's about investing in something or hiring or firing an executive? How do you think through a difficult choice?
I'm an engineer by background, so therefore, typical math and objective data and all of that does play a significant role. So I would start with what are the objectives one is trying to achieve. And those objectives have to be broad enough to actually gravitate up to, does it match the purpose of the company? Does it match the values of the company? Does it match the culture and behavior you're trying to drive? And those become overarching principles of any decision that you take. And then on the specific decision, I would start with making sure that as much data as possible can be pulled together. The chances are no single individual has enough data. So are you able to get data from your team and from other people? These days, the kind of data that you should look for are not just within the company, but outside the company as well. So an ecosystem of partners, people you trust, and collect that data. And then have a debate. Because never ever is it an obvious choice. It's never an obvious choice. It's actually choice one, choice two, choice three. Pros and cons, pros and cons, pros and cons. And you got to weigh that. And that's where values and culture and purpose plays a big role. Because some are very sharply aligned to your culture. I'll give you, and values. One of them, for example, when confronted with a decision that tells you that if you take path A, the client would be delighted. It may not be that great for you, but you know your client is going to be delighted. Path B, the client might not be that thrilled. It'll be okay, but it's certainly good for you. We are very clear. Our North Star is do what's right for the client. Invariably, our view is that actually comes to pay back for us in a positive way, in a long-term sustainable relationship with the client, doing the right thing, and building long-term relationships with our clients and business with our clients. So again, decision-making, group rather than single, diverse and inclusive rather than keeping out data that otherwise you would not get, not just within the company but ecosystem, and then being objective. And once you decide, staying true to the course, and being very honest and transparent, which is the other thing that's important.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned sticking to kind of your North Star, because I feel like sometimes what happens is leaders have a North Star, but then they compromise it for the sake of something else. And not just CEOs, but, it could be a mid-level leader, a director or a VP. And sometimes they get in trouble because they have a conflict between, their North Star versus profit versus revenue. And it sounds like, at least according to you, it's very important that even if it does make some sort of sacrifice, you have to stick to the North Star.
And the North Star could be profit and revenue.
Yeah.
It could be. In which case, that decision could be right. But you should stick to your North Star, because if you don't, then irrespective of the size of your organization, people see it. When they see it, they say, okay, so there's a values here and a purpose here, but it's not necessarily the way people are expected to behave. And I think I read somewhere the definition of culture is the way people behave when no one is watching. And if you start signaling that it's okay to behave in a certain way, then when you're not being watched, people are going to behave in a certain way, in which case culture gets destroyed. So,
yeah. What does a typical day look like for you as the CEO of a 100,000 person company? And maybe
Are
you
we
can
talking, are we talking pre-COVID or during COVID?
maybe you can give it maybe both. And even starting from when you wake up, like, do you have any particular morning rituals that you do or practices, or are you just like out of bed and in work mode?
So pre-COVID, 150 days out of 350, 360 days was travel. Traveling to different cities where our clients are located, which is typically global, and where our operating centers are located, which is 25 different countries. So that's typically wake up in the morning, often very, very early, in order to get to the airport to catch a flight. And then, the next day could be waking up in that city to get ready for a meeting in that city, or catch the next flight. So, which is why I said pre-COVID, typical mornings would vary dramatically depending on which city you're in, which flight you're going to catch, et cetera, et cetera. And then what time zone you're in, because you're in different time zones. You could be in China, you could be in Australia, and then you're back 2 days later into New York. Very different, and therefore very tough to pin down a typical day. There are probably 10 or 15 typical days. In the last 120 days, it's very different. There's no travel at all. We've been work from home since early March in New York and across the globe, and we don't think that's going to change in a hurry. There's no travel. Our clients don't expect travel. We are not traveling. We don't have travel allowed, and we are doing all our services and all my meetings, etc., on video conferences. And therefore, typical morning is waking up and getting ready for my first meeting. If you can squeeze in a run, that'll be great. Tough to do it if you're dealing with a global time zone situation, in which case, maybe the better option and the more easy option is shut down at a reasonable time and go for your run in the evening. But the whole day is, it's call after call after call. Sometimes it's Zoom, sometimes it's Microsoft Teams, sometimes it's Blue Jeans, sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that.
Lots of different things.
It's LinkedIn video.
Yeah, exactly. There's been a lot of debate and conversation around what work and what the world is going to look like post-COVID. Are we going to have offices anymore? Is everybody going to be working from home? I'm sure you've given a lot of thought to this, but what do you think? What does the new normal look like after we get through this? Which hopefully we will get through this not too far away, not in the not too distant future. But what do you think is going to be the outcome of this? How are things going to change, if at all?
I think, Jacob, the world has changed completely on many dimensions, so many dimensions, as it relates to the way people will work and the work life, where, how, etc. It's changed forever. Does that mean that a lot of work is going to be done from home and that's going to be the way work gets done? No, I don't think so. I think it's too simple to assume that therefore 50% of the work is going to be done from home from now on. No, that's not going to be the way it works. I think the answer is far more nuanced in terms of what kind of work are we talking about. So, for example, if it's work that requires dealing with highly private and confidential information, that requires people to be in an incredibly secure environment, let's call it an office, then I suspect work will be done in an office, and the office environment will still be the way work gets done in those situations. If, on the other hand, work is, let's say, closing the books for a large enterprise, which is some of the work that we do. Typically, finance teams work literally 5 days without a break at the time of a month or a quarter close. Now, all of that used to be done from an office. Wouldn't it be great to say, hey, you 100 people who are closing the books for this client, you have flexibility. You can either work from home or work from office, completely flexible. These times of such high stress and work with almost non-stop midnight work, go ahead and sit at home and work. And the technology is set up, the collaboration tools are set up. We've tested it during COVID-19. It actually works. And our client actually has no problem in us doing it. So I think by service, there's going to be a mixture of how much work can be done from office and how much from home. There's going to be a distribution of work in terms of where it gets done from an office environment. Are campuses going to be the way work gets done? I wonder. A campus of 10,000 people, is that really needed? Or is it better to have maybe 10 campuses of 1,000 people and distribute them in 10 different places, even within a city? How much commute time can be reduced? How much time that is wasted in traffic can be attacked? Isn't that one way of dealing with climate change? And then the last one I would say is, it's pretty cool to be able to say that I'm going to go to the state of Montana and find the 5 people there who are absolutely the best at something. Let's say supply chain in consumer goods. And those 5 people really don't want to leave Montana. I don't have an operating center or an office in Montana, but I can now pick the brains of those 5 people as part of the company. They join the company, they live in Montana, they work from Montana, they deliver great service to our clients in the consumer goods retail space, in supply chain. That's a home run. And then, of course, it opens up a huge talent opportunity for people who don't want to commute, diverse populations in different parts of the country and the world, who you can then access without having to have an office there. I think it changes a lot of things.
So you don't think that offices are going to disappear, but work will become more flexible?
Work will become flexible. People will love that flexibility.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people who want to work from an office. They're itching to come back. So it's going to satisfy such people as well. It's going to be more distributed than concentrated. There's no reason for it to be concentrated. That actually allows risk mitigation, talent access, a lot of other things. And in a very weird way, attack climate change, which is so fascinating.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you because, whenever I have some friends who say, offices are going to disappear, no one's going to work from an office. And I'm like, that's not true. I know a lot of people who are very excited to go back to an office. And, I think there will be more flexibility for people who want to work, maybe certain days, certain hours. But I definitely don't think that this is going to be the end of the office. People have talked about this for many, many decades. Even with co-working facilities, people said, we're not going to have offices anymore. And look at organizations like a Cisco or an Apple or a Samsung. They're creating new billion-dollar offices. So I think when we get through this, we will see more flexibility, but people will be back in the office. So I completely agree with you.
But the proportion of work, if you just count the amount of work that's going to be done in a non-office environment, that's going to go up.
Yeah.
That's going to go up. And that's good because it could have gone up without COVID-19. All the technologies were available. People just don't like change in general.
Yeah.
Change has been forced on us. Now we've experimented. It works. So we're going to mix it.
Yep. And you guys obviously do a lot of digital transformation work at Genpact. So have you had some clients who have been trying to do digital transformation for many, many years, and all of a sudden COVID happens and they're doing in a couple of months what they've tried to do for like 5 years?
Oh my God. I think some clients, I would say a lot of clients.
Yeah.
A lot of clients in every industry are really going through a very significant compression of time for digital transformation. Decision making is faster.
Yeah.
They get it. They understand it. They are able to get change through the mid layer of the organization. The leaders always got it, but it was tough to drive change through the mid layer of the organization. The mid layer of the organization now gets it. And I think a lot of companies are off to the races in terms of a variety of changes that you can pull it all together and say that's digital transformation, including the pressure from their customers, from the consumer, as more and more more and more business gets transacted online, irrespective of the industry.
Yeah.
That means you need digital transformation to actually transact online if that's not your normal mode of business.
Why do you think it took something like COVID for a lot of organizations to speed up their digital transformation? Because this isn't a new concept. We've been talking about it for years, and companies have been saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to do it, maybe." So why did it take something like COVID for them to force this change? Why couldn't they just do it before this?
It's human, Jacob. It's human. It's human and social. and therefore it's human, because social is all human. And it's about things are working. Why do I need to change? Um, there are so many things that I have to deal with when I drive this change that I don't want to deal with those things. How do I build camaraderie with my team? How do I build how do I actually deal with new employees who come in and build a culture? If culture is important for the company, and I already described why it's important, how do I build a culture if everyone is going to be working from home? Those are challenges. I think when humans encounter resistance, different people react differently. Different situations, they react differently. If you're forced, you react in one way, which is you drive through the resistance. If you're not forced, then you say, hey, we'll drive it over time. So there is a luxury of driving over time. There are other priorities that become important. People explain to you why things may not work. And then you do the math and say, okay, maybe it doesn't work. We'll see it over time. There's no hurry. All of that. The moment you put a constraint and say, I'm not going to allow you to do this, you find a way to do it. You innovate.
Yeah.
So what COVID-19 has done is created a couple of constraints that has forced innovation and experimentation. It's the single biggest experiment. People are calling it the biggest experiment that humans have done in such a time frame. And I wonder whether other intractable problems in the world are actually solvable by actually deliberately putting constraints on. So, for example, climate change. What if all cities in the world declare that on weekends there will be no traffic inside the city? That's going to create a lot of problems. But I think people are going to say, okay, I'm going to innovate. I'm going to run the city without traffic on Saturdays and Sundays in the world.
Yeah, no, I like that idea because you're right. When we are forced into a box, we innovate and we think of something. But when we don't have those constraints, or when the time horizon is too far out, we tend to just push things off and say, it's not a big deal. So this really has shown what a constraint can do to our decision-making process.
Yeah, the other thing, Jacob, that struck me as I was saying that is, one of the interesting things about COVID-19 is that it kind of swept through the world.
Yeah.
So there is no one in the world who hasn't been impacted and hasn't had to take decisions that are similar to each other. Lockdown everywhere, not being able to go to office everywhere, leveraging technology to work from home everywhere. So as a result, when I speak to my client and I tell them, look, I'm not going to be able to travel, this is what my team is going to do, they say, I get it, because I'm doing the same thing. So there is no reason to sell anything to anyone and convincing anything on any topic to anyone. That's a cool thing. So in climate change, wouldn't it be great if 100 cities came together, all the mayors, and actually said, together we're going to do this, versus 5 cities doing it and the other 95 cities saying, no, I don't care. That doesn't work, actually.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I'm also really curious, how has leadership changed as a result of COVID? Because usually, like you said, you're traveling, you get to see people, you could do all hands meetings, you could do all these things where people can see you and interact with you. And now you and the rest of your team, you're being forced to motivate and engage and inspire and empower people through a screen. Has that changed leadership for you at all?
Yeah, so I'll start at the leadership team level. We've always been a very high percentage virtual leadership team.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take the top 100 leaders in the company, they're distributed across many cities in the world. There is no single office they work out of. Many of them actually don't work from offices, have never worked from offices. We get together in an office once in a while, but actually they're all distributed across. They spend a lot of time with clients. That's the nature of our business. So for us to do what we are doing today didn't require that much change to work with each other.
Mm-hmm.
The one change, of course, is we are unable to get together even that once in a while. Right? So every quarter we would get together as a team. Every month, a few of us would get together, depending on where, close tri-state area, people would get together. The European team would get together. Even that is not possible now. I think the change is much bigger as you cascade down to 100,000 people. And as leaders, dealing with the 100,000 people, there's a lot of change. Clearly, my ability to go to an operating center with 10,000 people and spend time with that team for 3 days and immerse myself in that team and do big town halls is gone.
Yep.
So what have we done? We've done 3 or 4 things. We've dramatically increased the frequency of our virtual communication. And when I say dramatically increased, from once a quarter, in some cases, global town hall once a quarter, once a week, our leaders are now sending out video blogs. Once a month, we're doing global town halls. From global town halls having a participation rate physically of 7,000 people, we now have 20,000 people at least joining in on a combined video conference during a global town hall. The number of such interactions as you cascade down, the number of times I'm getting together with my team, gone up 5 times because all of it is virtual. So that's one big change. The second is, I think you've got to really empathize much more. As a leader, you need to empathize in any case. But in these times, empathy becomes incredibly important.
Yeah.
How do you empathize when you actually physically can't see the person other than through a video? How do you pick up body language? How do you pick up... By the way, there are a couple of benefits that the current situation has thrown up. It democratizes meetings dramatically. When you have 100 people all on video conference, everyone is equal. When you have 100 people in a meeting, but 30 of them are in one place, and the other 70 are distributed in 20 places, the 30 who are in one place actually take over the conversation.
Yep.
And the other 70 feel a little left out. That cannot happen. It's much more difficult, and therefore, I've had reactions from people say, I feel more included now than I used to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Very cool. Yeah, I mean, it's been very, very interesting. And I suppose even when you start meetings, you mentioned empathy. And I suppose nowadays, with being completely virtual, I mean, leaders can't start off their meetings by saying like, hey, how are those numbers? You know, how are you doing on the project? They need to be much more like, are you safe? Are you okay? How are you doing? How's your family? Being much more kind of human first.
Yeah, and it's fascinating you say that. One, it's true. But if you think about a physical meeting, when people get into a room for a meeting, the first 5 minutes, they're greeting each other.
Yeah.
They're figuring out, okay, did you get caught in the rain? You know, what happened last evening? You know, all of those before people finally sit down and say, okay, let's start the meeting.
Yep.
In a video conference, if you're not careful, you flip the switch, everyone is in. And as a leader, you can jump in and start the meeting saying, what are the numbers?
Yeah.
Unless you pause and say, no, let's actually have some airtime on just shooting the breeze, talking about other things, understanding what's the mood of people. And you realize, oh,
yep,
this person is going to be stressed for this reason. So otherwise you would watch body language.
Yeah.
And say, John, what's happened? Why are you looking stressed? You can't see that now.
Yep. Have you had to train your leaders a little bit on that and give them some guidance and coaching on how to be more effective leaders in the virtual world?
So as I said, because we've worked at the leadership team, as you cascade down, in very significant cohorts of virtual teams, it's been less training requirements that otherwise a company would need. Having said that, I think we are all using these tools 10 times more than ever before. We are using new tools that we hadn't used. So for example, we now conduct virtual workshops. So think about 20 people from our team sitting in 20 different homes. By the way, they sit in 5 different cities between Tokyo, India, London, New York, and Palo Alto. And on the other side, there are 20 people from the client. And they're sitting in Atlanta, Boston, Shanghai, and Australia. And the 40 people have a 3-day workshop, 8 hours followed by 8 hours followed by 8 hours. the way you would have a workshop, except that it's not physical, it's virtual. So what does a workshop have? It has a whiteboard. It has post-it notes. It has the ability to go up to the whiteboard and say, no, I don't agree with this. This is the way I would think about it. It has the ability to say, okay, why don't we all disappear for the next 1 hour and break up into 5 groups, into breakout rooms, and then come back after 1 hour. Well, on the video conference, you can actually immediately break off into 5 groups. And you can set that up. You can actually do post-it pad workshops, value stream mapping, and things like that virtually. And then at the end of 3 days, you come up with a solution for a problem, a solution for a working capital problem, a solution for our insurance claims problem, along with your client.
So a lot of it translates to the digital world.
Yeah, it's all using digital tools that existed for collaboration. I think there are new tools that are being created because the use has gone up so much that people are innovating more.
Yep.
The reaction of our people and our clients doing all of this is, it's obviously not the same as physical. You miss the human emotion element of being together in a room. You miss the fact that at the end of the day, you can go for a drink and dinner.
Yep.
You clearly miss that. However, there are some clear benefits. I don't think 20 of our people would have flown into one city to do this workshop. Neither would 20 of our client stakeholders flown in. It would have been probably 5 and 5 in one room and everyone else on video conference. I don't think you do justice to the people on video conference in that kind of a meeting.
Yeah, I agree.
Second, our ability to drag experts into that conversation from our team. Hey, I need you for 1 hour because you are the expert in this one topic on financial crimes and risk, in fraud, in the small business lending space. And I need you to spend 1 hour in this workshop. Okay, I'm available for 1 hour. Are you going to fly down to Tokyo for that 1 hour meeting? No, unlikely. No. So I think the use of these tools, technologies, has really explosively grown.
Yep.
And all that is good. And I'm sure post-COVID, we'll continue to use these in a hybrid mode.
So I wanted to shift gears a little bit because I know things like diversity and inclusion are also very important to you. You've also been doing a lot to commit to advancing, putting more women in senior leadership positions. And I know obviously with what's been going on with Black Lives Matter, this is another huge topic of conversation. So can you share a little bit about the impact that has had on your company and maybe some of the things that you have been doing as a result?
So for many years, we've always believed that in our business, which is all about talent, we are a professional services organization. We drive digital transformation. We don't make things.
Yeah.
So for us, talent is the most important ingredient for success for us. We've always believed that our ability to attract the best and brightest talent in the world is a winning proposition and a differentiated winning proposition for us. And the more we can do that, the better. Therefore, we've always believed that if we can create a differentiated value proposition for diverse talent, that is cool for our business. And therefore, more than 15 years ago, at the top of the company, we said, can we attack gender diversity as an incredibly important thing to drive in the company? And if we get better and better at driving gender diversity, then we become a magnet for some of the best women leaders in the world, and that'll create a differentiated value proposition. Because our belief is the more diverse the team you have, the better the solution you build for our clients. And we've been on the journey for 15 years. We've made significant progress. In my leadership team now, I have 5 women out of 15. It used to be 1. We have 4 board members on our board. It used to be 0. And this has been all 5-year journeys. And that cascades right down through the organization. And we all feel very good, though we still have a long way to go on gender diversity. And then George Floyd happens. As a leadership team, we get together and we decide that it's time for us to add racial equality as a top of the house agenda for the entire company. And that decision was taken over a one virtual meeting on a Monday morning, 1 hour meeting.
Wow, so you moved quickly. It wasn't like, let's talk about it for months or.
No. The weekend was email traffic between us. Monday morning, 9 o'clock meeting. 10 o'clock decision taken. By the evening, we had announced that we are adding racial equality as an equal diversity and inclusion pillar to gender equality. And then we announced a leader for that, Hope Cooper. She's one of the rising leaders in the company, African American, and she's taken charge of it. A bunch of the playbook that we had used and developed on gender equality, we are bringing it into the racial equality world. Some of them are the same. So, for example, how do we remove subconscious bias in our hiring process? How do we make sure that in our training programs that become the gateway for promotion in the company, we make sure that we have diverse, racially equal diversity inside our training classes? Two examples where the playbook that we used on gender diversity, we are rolling it out in racial equality program. However, there are some that are different. One of the big differences was we decided that we will first conduct a whole bunch of listening sessions across the US. And we have a significant population in the US and a significant racially diverse population, though potentially not racially diverse as you get to leaders in the company. So we held, I think, a significant number, more than 7 or 8, pretty large group listening sessions. We collected all of that.
When you say listening session, was this just like anybody could join and they could just talk to you and share what they're thinking and feeling and what's going on with them?
Yeah. This is the African American Black population and Latino Black population in North America, and the leaders who hosted these were a few leaders from my team and a couple of the diversity leaders. And our objective was just to listen. We didn't talk much. We actually absorbed and listened. And that was very important because we wanted to hear what's on people's minds. What are their experiences? What are their fears? What are the things they don't like? What are the things they like? A whole bunch of things. That then helped us sharpen our agenda. So we now have a proper agenda. We've defined our metrics and we've defined goalposts for a bunch of those metrics, similar to the way we did it or we continue to do it in the gender diversity program. And then we've defined a few organizations outside the company to work with who are, who do a lot of work in this space. One of the organizations we've connected with is the NAACP. We are in dialogue with them. We think we can bring our capability around process and digital and education and programs to teach and use the NAACP to reach out to high schools and colleges to actually drive those programs in those communities that then creates talent for the world and creates talent for companies like us.
Yeah, no, that's important. It's crazy. And I posted about this on LinkedIn as well. So I interviewed a couple of chief human resource officers, I think almost 5 years ago now, from some big global brands. And both of them ended up coming under extreme fire lately and losing their jobs because they didn't take these issues serious enough. One of them was caught saying inappropriate things in the Bay Area at a park. Another one said she was addressing racial issues and she said it was just noise. And I mean, these are, chief human resource officers that a lot of people really looked up to and admired. So it really goes to show that there's a lot of work that still needs to be done for big global organization and the heads of HR behind them. So I was totally blown away, completely shocked.
Yeah, no, there is a tremendous amount of work to be done. But I have deep optimism that I think for the first time ever, we're going to solve it together. Yeah. It's not going to be an easy solution. It's not a flip the switch and you solved it. It's going to be a journey. But I think the way leaders in the corporate world have jumped onto this more than ever before, with so much commitment and determination, and have been so public about it, that I think the needle is going to move here.
Yep. I hope so too. Well, we only have a couple minutes left, and towards the end, I wanted to ask you some fun rapid fire questions. But before we get into that, one thing that we haven't touched on really, and I actually haven't talked about this in a little while on this podcast, just because, COVID and so many things have changed. And that's the impact that artificial intelligence might have on jobs. And I hear very different perspectives and thoughts on that. Are you an optimist when it comes to AI and jobs, or what do you think the impact is going to be on us humans?
So it's actually funny you say that we haven't talked about this in your podcast much these days. Until COVID-19, it was the single biggest topic I would be talking about.
Exactly.
COVID-19, it's not been a big conversation at the moment. I'm an optimist in general on all topics broadly. So therefore, on AI and machine learning and those types of technologies as well, I'm a big optimist. And the optimism comes from, I think what people need to understand is technology solves problems. Technology solves problems that have been very, very difficult to solve in the past. If you take education, healthcare, and financial inclusion, I would argue anywhere from 1.5 to 2 billion people in the world don't think they are financially included enough. They don't have an access to a bank. They don't have access to healthcare, very difficult. And they don't have access to very simple education.
Yep.
Just simple reading and writing and math at basic levels. And what AI machine learning potentially can do is create the opportunity to build solutions using those that at the fingertip allows someone deep inside a village in Africa to be able to access those three things at a cost that is close to zero. And therefore, the person can actually access it. If you think of a bank account, it takes quite a few tens of dollars, $50 maybe, to open a bank account and transact.
Yep.
So if my objective is to save 50 cents a day, which by the way is the savings potential for many people in many parts of the world, then I can't have a bank account because no bank wants to open an account where I save 50 cents a day. With AI and machine learning, you can actually create a platform that then connects to the bank that actually does that at such low cost. So I think the potential for game-changing, lifting people out of poverty. And what that does, Jacob, is what lifting out of poverty does. Not only lifts those people out of poverty, but people who actually provide those services can actually create value. Yep. So I think there's value creation for doctors to be able to serve billions of people using AI machine learning and telemedicine. For teachers to teach large groups of people, create content that then goes out. Like all technologies, unfortunately, you can misuse it.
Yes.
And that's the worry that I think the world should have, which is, can it be misused? Can wars be fought using AI-driven weapons? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
You know, can the world be taken over by a warlord who then has AI driving, conquering territories? The answer is yes, and so on. But I think the world has done a good job, meandering around a little bit, whether it comes to nuclear energy or it comes to various other technologies, to find a balance and create a dialogue that prevents bad things from happening. But it's required. Ethics in AI is a big topic that needs to be brought in.
One of the things I love about the conversation with you today is not once did you say that your goal is to make more money for Genpact. You always talk about these big goals like climate change and diversity and inclusion and ending poverty. And so I really love that you obviously you understand that as a leader, you need to grow the business, but you have these other goals outside of the business of positively impact the world, which I really love to see. You didn't once say like, gotta make more money for the business, we need more dollars and cents. So I think more leaders need to kind of embrace that mentality of positively impacting the world and ending very human and real challenges that we're all faced with.
Yeah, and Jacob, my deep belief is that they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
You can serve four stakeholders, which I think is one of the big changes that COVID-19 is driving. Yep. Your clients, your employees, your community, and your investors, shareholders. And finding an answer that serves all four is often the right answer for long-term sustainable businesses. So, yeah. Thank you.
So just we only have like 4 or 5 minutes left. So I just have a couple fun rapid fire questions for you to wrap up. Starting off with, what was the one moment in your life that most influenced your approach to leadership?
Whoa.
If you have one, like a
Whoa.
particular experience or interaction.
So many of them. So many of them. But I would say being with a team. When I took my second job, my second role in the first job, my second role within a year of my joining, when I took over a team that had 10 of the best salespeople in the company that I was in, and I was a rookie, but I was their boss, and I somehow found a way to basically get a bunch of them to teach me. So they were working for me. I was their boss. They took instructions from me, but actually they were teaching me. And they told me that they're going to teach me, and I told them, you got to teach me. And that drove success for the entire team. I became successful. They became successful. I think such a life lesson, because I continue to believe that the role of a leader is also to learn from the teams they have. More so today than ever before, because the 30-year-old, the 25-year-old who is actually inventing the next new cool technology that's going to do something, if I don't learn that, I'm going to be redundant tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I have to learn that.
I love that. So having a little bit of...
So the thing that it taught me is ego has no role to play. Humility is such a cool quality to have, and embracing that and living that every day is incredibly important.
Yeah, I was just going to say humility and vulnerability, and I love that you call it a cool quality. Next question for you. What has been your greatest business failure?
Again, a lot. I would say not pulling the plug fast enough when you know something is not working is a lesson that you keep learning. And in the world of digital and analytics and all this cool stuff, people talk about fast failure and people talk about experimentation. I've come to believe that the problem that a lot of people have, the problem that I think I have had and I've learned, is not that I don't experiment, but when the experiment stops working and you know it's not going to work, can we get together and pull the plug and move on to the next idea, rather than thinking about, oh, we've spent so much time, I'm going to try and find a way to make it work. No, it's okay.
Yeah. What has been your most embarrassing moment?
Oh.
If you remember one.
Within 30 days of landing in Connecticut, when I moved to the US in 2002, I was invited to be a special invited guest amongst 25 up-and-coming leaders of GE to have dinner with Jeff Immelt in the boardroom in GE's headquarters in Fairfield County in Connecticut. This was, I guess, early November. I got caught in a snowstorm driving from Danbury to Fairfield, which any Google map will say is about a 20-minute ride. I got lost. It was snowing at 5 p.m. It was dark. I got lost. I landed 1 hour late for the dinner. And there were 29 people along with Jeff Immelt sitting and having their soup when I walked in.
That's a good one. I like that one.
And the response I got from Jeff was, he looked at me and said, "Welcome to Connecticut. You know how Connecticut is."
I like it. That's a great one. What are you most proud of?
I'm proud of the team we have in the company. And I think I've always been proud of that, but I think the last 5 months has demonstrated the simplicity with which everyone approached. Your description of what do you do when you wanted to create a playbook when none existed in China, and then the simplicity with which people approach, and zero debate on what's the right thing to do. Literally zero debate around here's what's right for the client and here's what's right for the employees. Nothing else matters. The fact that everyone in the company did that. By the way, in many cases, no one told them to do that. We didn't have an opportunity to tell people. It all happened so quickly. which is why I think culture is so important. So the culture that we've created in the company around that kind of a topic and around the topic of learning, if there's one word that all of us love, it's curiosity.
Yes.
We deeply believe that humans are driven by curiosity, and humankind is about being curious. Nothing else actually makes us as different from all other animals as curiosity, both individual curiosity and group curiosity.
Yeah.
Group curiosity is even crazier. It's amazing. Social curiosity, and therefore it creates a learning culture. So I would say that's the proudest thing for me.
Okay. And last couple for you. What's your favorite business or non-business book?
Oh, the one I'm reading now, which is for the second time, which is Grit by
Grit. Oh, okay.
Angela Duckworth.
Okay.
I do believe it's a not fully understood concept, but it's a deep concept.
Yeah.
That I think as leaders should embrace.
And last two questions for you. Who's the best mentor you've ever had?
Oh, I don't think they're the best. I think many. A lot of my bosses have been great mentors. I look for quality A, behavior B, skill C from almost anyone I meet. I have the privilege of meeting so many leaders in my job because of the nature of our business, where we deal with large companies, and I meet the leaders of those companies. For me, every one of those meetings is, wow, I didn't know that. I learned that. I was with I won't name the person. I was with the CEO yesterday of a large company that we are partners of, and basically the CEO said, in the US, there are 3 stresses that we all need to be aware of that every single individual is going through in the US. Stress number 1, working from home, dealing with everything that working from home, including kids and dogs and cats and all of that, and the technology and not being able to meet people, etc. Stress number 2 is the racial equality strife that clearly creates stress in the system. And the third is, as you get closer, he said, as you get closer and closer to November, the stress of elections. So he said, when you have all 3 stresses, people are sensitive, and I thought that was great. That's such a big learning.
Yeah.
So when you speak to someone, keep those 3 stresses in mind. Big learning.
Yep. I love that. And last question for you is, if you were doing a different career, what do you think you would have ended up doing?
Teaching.
I love it. That's a great one.
Teaching. Why? Because as a teacher, the biggest joy of teaching is that you're with people who are going to challenge you, and therefore you learn.
Yes.
No better place to learn than 100, university kids or high school kids, whatever kids, pistol kids, but let's say college kids, challenging you. And at the end of that, you say, wow, I never thought of that. That is a question I never thought of. Now I have to figure out an answer. I don't have an answer.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join me. Where can people go to learn more about you? I know you're on LinkedIn, but anything that you want to mention for people to check out about the company or yourself, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, so the company, www.genpact.com. It's actually a very cool website. 3 years back, we changed it.
It is. It's super cool. I just took a look at it.
Cool. And I love my own website, so that's good. LinkedIn, you can do a search with my name. There aren't too many people with that kind of a name, so you'll get it. And Twitter handle, same name, you'll get it.
Very cool. Well, Tiger, thank you so much for taking time out of your day again. I really, really appreciate it.
Jacob, this has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you. You covered a variety of topics all over.
Yeah, we tried to get to a lot of stuff. So I'm looking forward to getting this out there for the world to listen to and watch. So thanks again.
Thanks, Jacob.
Thanks everyone again for tuning in. My guest, Tiger Tyagarajan, CEO of Genpact, and I will see all of you very soon.